Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company. Take a look at this quilt behind me. Look at this quilt. Now these blocks are tiny. They're tiny. It's the tiny little double 9 patch. It's so tiny, but it's so easy. Let me show you how to do this because you know if I'm doing it, there's got to be a trick. So to make this quilt, what you're going to need is one roll of 2.5-inch strips of a print. And we have used this awesome Bonnie and Camille roll. It's called At Home with Bonnie and Camille for Moda. You're also going to need a roll of 2.5-inch background strips. We used white. And then because we're making this a double 9 patch, you're going to need some 3-inch-ish squares. And so you're going to need 1 3/4 yards of background fabric that matches your roll fabric as well. And that's going to take care of this inner border and all of these little squares that are in these 9 patches. For this border, you're going to need 1 1/4 yards. It's a nice big 6-inch border. You guys know I love a stripe for the binding. You'll need 3/4 yards for that. And look at this back. Isn't this a gorgeous back? Just beautiful. Really, really a pretty quilt. And I can't wait to show you how to do this because this is so fun. And I rarely do tiny. I recently attended a retreat and there's a gal there who's always working on some teeny tiny things. And I'm so amazed. But I decided this time to give it a try. And so I can't wait to show you how I did this because it's really fun. So what I did was I opened up my strips. And some are going to be your middles. You're making 9 patches like this tiny, sweet little precious 9 patch. You're going to need to make 5 of those so you can make a block like this. This is what we're talking about now. So it's a double 9 patch. It's a 9 patch in a 9 patch. And it's mini. So it's the mini double 9 patch that we're talking about today. So what I did was I cut my strips in half. I used a color and a white. And I just cut them in half. And originally I did this because I wasn't sure how many I could get out of each strip, but I knew that cutting these little pieces I was going to get a lot. So what I did was I took my strips and I sewed them together on both sides. So I have a colored strip and a white strip, and they are sewn 1/4 inch on both sides. Now that's important. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take this strip and I'm going to fold it in half and line it up exactly like this, so it just matches, this edge matches exactly. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to cut this strip right in half. So this is a 2.5-inch strip, so we're going to do a 1 1/4 cut. And I'm measuring from the edge of the fabric, not the seam line, so 1 1/4 from the edge of the fabric, and we're going to make this cut. And I'm going to make sure I got all my little pieces I did. So now we have these 2 pieces. Now this one right here, I'm going to press open. And look how tiny they are. It's so cute. I actually really enjoyed this. This was something, you know, I don't tend to do these kind of tiny things, but it's easy when you have a trick. And we definitely have a little trick for this. All right, so now this one, if this is going to be my outside strip set, I need another piece, my other half of this, I'm going to take and cut in half so that I have a 1 1/4 inch strip to add to the other side. So again, I'm folding this in half, measuring from the edge of the fabric, just like this. And this one is going to go on this side. And this makes your outer edge of your 9 patch. Now for the middle one, I'll use this strip for the middle, and we are iron it back. Just like this. And we will use the other half of a white strip that we've cut in half. Let me just cut one right here. I'm going to cut it at the fold. And then we're going to fold this up and cut it too. So I can just show you so you have a visual of how this is going to work. 1 1/4 is half of 2 1/2. So then this strip set right here, this one makes the outside. When we add a white to the outside of this one, it makes the inside. So now you can see how that's done. So let's go ahead and sew one of these down. All right, I'm just going to line this up. Now, when you're dealing with tiny, one of the little tips is that 1/4 inch matters because if you know, if it's off at all, I mean, the block we're talking about, the finished size is like 3/4 of an inch. So that matters. So watch that 1/4 of an inch. I have this cool tape on here that is called diagonal seam tape, and it's great to have. You can use a 1/4 inch foot, put some painter's tape, whatever, but just know that you want to watch your 1/4 of an inch on this. So I'm staying really close to that line, and it's okay for these tiny things to slow down a little bit. I won't sew quite so fast. I can't help it, you guys. Everything, I'm just like Speedy Gonzales. All right, so now we've got our strip sewn down, and we're going to press that open. And you want to make sure that you press toward the dark. So we're just going to make sure there's no pleats, no folds. That's really important when you're dealing with a block this tiny. All right, so now on these blocks, you'll notice I made my center different. And so I have some centers already cut over here of a different fabric. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to straighten up this edge, and then I'm going to cut them in 1 1/4 inch segment. And for each block, I'm going to need 2 of these. And there are, let's see, I kept my colors together, and there are 5 blocks on here. So that means I need to make 10 cuts. Now I have some of these already done. But I'm just going to go ahead and cut a few of these so you can see. You can actually fold this strip in half if you want. You just have to make sure it's really lined up carefully if you do that. And when you're dealing with these tinies, don't take those kind of chances until you feel really confident. You can see I'm still cutting one at a time. And I am a stacker. All righty. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take these middles right here, and I am going to, now the middles again, I pressed to the dark, so they will nest up with these seams. So they will just slide in here and nest up with these seams, and I'm just going to sew a few of these together. We're going to chain piece them, enough for the block. And this feels, you know, it's not harder, it's just smaller. And so you just want to remember that when you're sewing. This is not at all harder. We do this, we've made 1,000,000 9 patches. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to try with this block, is because it's not a harder block, but it is a smaller block. So let me make sure I got this one lined up. And one more, and then we're going to sew the other sides on these. Now, another thing when you're sewing tiny, this is another reminder, and this is a tip that is, it's a good tip. You probably want to shorten your stitch length a little bit, because when you're dealing with these tiny little seams, it'd be real easy for them to come apart, you know, because they're just not very much, there's just not very much room there. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew the other half on these to make a completed 9 patch. And I'm just going to line this up. Now make sure that you put your other side, you know, it goes on this side over here. So you're lining it up with your little middle green square. Just like this. It just takes a bit of time. All right, so here's my last little one for the center. And then what you want to do, of course we've given you sizes in the pattern, but what you want to make sure, consistency is more important than perfection. It's more important than Oh my gosh, mine's this much off. If yours are all the same, it has to do with the width of your seam allowance. Don't stress over it. So what you want to do is you want to take your blocks and you want to look at them and see if they're all about the same size, and they should be. And mine are. You want to give that a measure, and you want to know that you're going to need a background block to go right next to that is the same size. And so you're going to cut a strip that's that same size, and mine is 3. And then you're going to cut the squares into that same size. All right, so now we're ready to lay this out. And we're going to put our 4 pieces out, 1 in the middle, and you're going to have a background square in between them. Now, if you sew the perfect 1/4 inch, that block size is going to be 2 3/4. But if yours don't come out exactly that, don't be afraid to measure them and cut them your size, because everybody's 1/4 inch is a little different. And when you're dealing with these tiny, tiny numbers, that matters. So I'm going to sew these together in a row. You can see we made a big 9 patch with our little 9 patches. And I'm just going to stitch these together now. And I'm going to... And they don't match up with anything, so no stress over that. I'm going to go right down this side and pick up the first 2 vertical rows. And honestly, for me, this is another little tip. And it's not a helpful tip except for stress. I sew with the white fabric on the top. If I sew this way, then I'm worried about all those little seams, and we don't need to be. They're pressed down, they're fine, they're going to fit in there. And for me, it's just like, oh, I can sew that seam on that background, you know. It just makes it work a little easier in my brain. And so then here, we're going to come over here and add the other side. And so I'm going to flip this over and go right down the other side. And also, if your blocks, if they come out so that they are, if they don't fit exactly, remember that we're still dealing with a 1/4 inch seam here. So when we put the block together, you might be able to hide that in the seam. So don't really stress about this too much, because this is the first tiny thing I have ever done. And honestly, I came up with this idea. I made quite a few blocks, and then I handed it over to my granddaughter, Aislinn. She works on our sewing team, and she has not made very many quilts. And she was able to finish this quilt, and look how gorgeous it is. And I'm just so proud of her, because this is some work. And so I think that's really cool. And to me, that kind of gives everybody hope that, it's that even a beginner, fairly beginner, can accomplish this with just a little patience and, slow down a little bit. All right, so now I'm going to sew these 3 rows together. And I'm starting, and I'm going to match up my block and my seam in there. And that's where you just want to watch to make sure that your little pieces don't come, because if you give it a tug, that piece could come unsewn, and you don't want it to. And my last row. Now I'm going to fold this, make sure this fits. I'm going to flip this over and start this way, I think. All right, now on some of these, I'll show you this in a minute, but on some of these, like the white part is a little taller than the other part, but I know that I can catch that in that seam. And the feed dogs will take in more fabric. Woo! And so we don't have to worry about that too much. It actually looks really good. All right, let me iron this. The iron, steam, this is our friend. All right, look how beautiful this is. I feel so proud of myself right now. Now let me show you how I put this together in the quilt, because this was fun too. This wasn't what I was thinking, but this is what it happened. And that often happens when you get all your blocks and you have your design wall there and you just start putting things out and you try different things. You're like, this is what I like. And so this is what we came up with. And we decided just to put put them right next to each other. So there are rows where they're just right next to each other. No staggering, no nothing. So when the next one, when we put this whole row together, we get a 4, our 9 patch 4s up as a secondary block right there. And so let's see, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 blocks across, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 down. We made 72 blocks. Now, the interesting thing, let me show you how I put these together. And I actually changed this about halfway through the quilt. I made a change. And so see how these go together as we're sewing them together, and they make this little secondary 4 patch, and they kind of chain, off each other, which I really love. But what I decided, because there was such lights and darks in this roll, right here you can see there's all these darks and vibrants, and then we have these lights over here. I decided to put my lights to the edge. And so see how it kind of lightens up on the edge? I think it gives it like a sparkle look. It just gives it a really cool look because I've got the heavier colors in the middle and it kind of sparkles going out to the edge. So gosh, guys, I hope you'll give this a try. It's as easy as sewing 2 strips together and cutting them in half. And I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the mini double 9 patch from the Missouri Star Quilt Company.